you know.
for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, hey, it's great to meet you. I want to begin our conversation with, we look at the calendar, it's April right now. 4 years ago, the world stopped on a dime.
Mm.
How did you survive the pandemic and how did it change you?
All right. Should I answer now?
Yeah, yeah. I come from
Okay.
jazz radio, so I hit the hi-hat
Okay.
and we
Sure.
run.
All right. Sounds, oh, great. Yeah. Let's go. Um, yeah. Wow. Okay. So give you a little bit of context. So I was working in a corporate job up until 2019, and I left that job to pursue writing full time and coaching. And basically, I wanted to try uh, working as an entrepreneur. That sounded pretty neat, working from home. So I did that. And then, as you know, the pandemic hit in 2020. Now, um, here's the thing is like working in a corporate job, you're used to going into work every day, meeting and greeting people, and you're surrounded by other people you're working together as a team. And then suddenly I'm at home, not doing that anymore, working from home, working on Zoom. And for the first 6 months or so, it was pretty interesting. But then once the pandemic hit and we all got isolated, I found myself kind of living in a bubble, like, like a lot of people. We weren't really confined at home here. We kind of were, but I mean, it was like, they didn't want us going out. So, um, I think that year was probably, and this is probably true for a lot of people, it's one of the hardest years of my life because, I suddenly didn't want to be a writer anymore. That wasn't as much fun as I thought it would be. And I would say like in 2020, I don't think and I'm usually like rather, I think productive and prolific when it comes to putting books out there. I can put out like 5 or 6 a year, but I didn't put out a single book that year. In fact, I probably ended up unpublishing more than I ended up publishing. But yeah, just like the mental strain of that, like being confined at home and no, and the guilt of that too is like the year before I actually willingly quit my job, right? So I didn't even have that to go to. And I just how I got through that, I think I just ended up getting into a lot of meditation and really just going deep within myself. If that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but that's really what I had to do. And I just had to like, it probably took about a year to pull myself out of that. And when I did, I ended up getting back into writing again after going through some, I guess, mentoring with a mentor of mine, call it counseling too. And he just said, like, you've got to either like go forward with this thing or you've got to do something completely different because we don't know when this thing's going to end or, where it's going to go. So I did. I just got back into writing and then I did publish another book and that turned out to be probably one of the better sellers I put out there. But it didn't come out without it came with a lot of pain too, because I probably had nothing left by then. I think all my savings were gone and, I had a couple of kids at home and everything like that. And I wasn't sure if I could, like being on Zoom calls as well, because I do a lot of coaching. So, you have to be emotionally present, which I wasn't for like a long time. So, all of that accumulated together, just, yeah, it was a big pile of stuff to sift through.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of third graders and one of the kids was curious and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living? It's career day. You got to answer them." How do you answer that child?
I say, I write books that helps people to, um, yeah, for third graders. I've never been asked that by a third grader, but I would tell them that I write the kind of books that helps people become really great at what they love to do. What do you like to do, everybody? So something like that.
So
You
what
know,
did you want to be in the third grade?
I wanted to be a writer.
Okay. So you're living the
Yeah.
dream.
Yeah, yeah. I always wanted to like love books. I think in the third grade, I mean, yeah, I've always like, I think, yeah, since I was like 10 or 11 years old, I was like, I want to write books. And I actually did end up writing my first book when I was probably 13 or 14. I spent like a year writing everything out by hand, didn't have a typewriter at the time. And this is going back, a few decades, but my father would bring home these yellow legal pads for me to write on from his office. And I would just like, I remember I wrote this science fiction novel and my dream was to get this published, and I never did publish it, but the thing is that the dream never left. Like it was always in my, it was always inside of me. So, but yeah, I started, I guess I picked up the pen again about 15 years ago, maybe when I just made a definitive decision that I had to make this happen because I was tired of just talking about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So take me back to where you were born and raised and how these roots of writing and motivating people, how did all this become you?
Yeah, so I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which most people know it's the Atlantic coast. It's a great place to be in the in the summertime. Not sure about the winter, but but I love it there. Anyway, I grew up with a lot of like Stephen King, Dean Koontz, like a lot of science fiction. I grew up with Star Wars when it first came out, right? So but I started reading, when my friends were reading comic books, I was under my, I was probably like under my covers reading Pet Cemetery, right? I just love those books. But it wasn't just the reading. I realized like something inside me was saying like I want to write stories. Like I just want to come up with stories. And I did. And I started with I remember having notebooks of just all these ideas. And I still do this, by the way. Like I keep in a notebook of all the ideas, whether they're, back then it was fiction. Now it's kind of a combination of both, actually. But like I just knew like I'd write out a story, I'd start writing out the character and all these things. And I probably almost didn't make it through school, I think, because I was the one in class who was always daydreaming, staring out the window, thinking about how can I get to Mars when the other kids were thinking about how can I pass this test. I was just coming up with other stories, and I just love that. So yeah, I don't think I've changed that much since then. I'm
Yeah.
still like I'll listen to I listen to soundtracks all the time, and I'll be listening to something, some piece of music from the movie, and I'll be visualizing myself as that guy jumping out of the plane, or as that guy, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
jumping over the river with a bunch of gators trying to eat him. So
What was one of your
yeah.
favorite stories that to this day? What's one of your favorite books or stories?
Oh man, let's see. It'd probably be depend. If we're talking movies or books.
Books.
Books? Okay. Yeah, I would say okay, I'm gonna go with Stephen King on that again. So I would say like Pet Cemetery, Christine, absolutely would be. Christine was one of my favorite books ever. I know he, back in the day he had a lot of like, The Stand, The Shining, Pet Cemetery, but I remember Christine, I read that 3 times before I was 12 years old, right? And I just loved it. And to this day, like I'll still go back every now and then and just kind of like, like flip through the pages and everything. But yeah, that was one of my favorite stories. And I grew up with like sci-fi too. So I have I think probably like Arthur C. Clarke had what 2001, 2010, those books. But yeah, for sure. I was really into, I love the horror. I love being scared. So I always
Yeah.
liked a good ghost story.
So, who's been a hero for you in your life?
Wow. Okay, so probably way back back then I would say because I love movies as well. So I'd probably say that George Lucas or Steven Spielberg were two of the guys that I grew up with, as well as the actors that were around the time, like Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
They're still around, thank God. But yeah, I just loved to like, especially with Steven Spielberg, because he's just such a great storyteller, right? So I grew up with like a lot of those movies, like The Goonies and E.T. and Back to the Future and everything. So I was always just surrounded by like this always had this like action adventure kind of personality where I kind of wanted to get in trouble just like everybody on screen or in the books. And but more than that, I wanted to create those kinds of things. So I think there was a time when I actually wanted to, get into the movies and get into special effects. And but it always came back to the writing. Like it was always the one thing that I just came back to, like that imagination of wanting to create something. So yeah.
So, you may have already answered this, but if you can meet one person alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Probably be Tony Robbins.
Okay.
And I have a reason for that. If just quick story. So, before I came to Japan, I was going through this, I don't know, transition where like I needed to grow and to get out of I need to get beyond a point in my life where I was actually stuck doing nothing. And one day I picked up Tony's book in the bookstore, Awaken the Giant Within. Yeah, that was it. And changed my life because I went through it. I was living in Vancouver at the time, working as an electrical engineer. And I went through his book and I was like, yeah, like he talks about the goals and like creating a second brain and all this. And it's like something you just wanted that. Like I knew if I could apply these strategies, something could change, right? Within a week, I had my walls were covered with I took down all my rock posters and Guns N' Roses posters, and a week later I had a vision board up there, like of all these places I wanted to travel around the world. And I'd never been anywhere, right? Outside of Canada at the time, maybe to the US once or twice, but I wanted to go like overseas and like see all these like temples and stuff like that. And I don't know where it came from, but when I was writing up my goals, that was one goal. The second goal was, of course, I wanted to be an author. So anyway, I spent when I decided that I was going to just give up everything and go overseas, things started happening. Like 3 months later, I found this advertisement in the newspaper that says "Teach English in Japan." And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So I applied for the job and got it. And this company brought us over and set us up. And it was literally like a dream because I just landed here, new culture and everything. So but anyway, yeah. So just getting back to, my influence was Tony, and I think I just wanted to have like 5 minutes with him to tell him that story. It's
Yeah.
like you changed not just my life, but I think everything I'm doing is helping other people to change theirs. I hope so. You've really impacted the world.
So what's the drive for you every day to get up, to do the work that you do to help others, and to also evolve as a person?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really big on, I mean, we're all evolving, I think. And the rate that you're evolving, I think, is, depending on how much time and energy you put into it. So, yeah, I'm always reading books. Of course, I'm always writing books, but a lot of the writing comes from the inspiration, right? So, yeah. And what gets me going first thing in the morning is knowing that the things that I'm working on today, whether it's like publishing a new book, creating a course, putting something out there into the world is going to have some kind of an impact on somebody who needs it, right? And I don't know who that is. I mean, I get emails from people saying they like this, or sometimes they didn't like it, but I'm going to have some kind of an impact on the world if I do this thing. And I think that's just like to me, that's just a great way to live, like to be doing something that is because I just love being, creative. I just love like building something and setting it to, putting it to sea, right? And you just never know that like where that ship's going to land, if that's a good analogy. It is. And what I've realized is that if I wasn't doing this thing, like what would I be doing? Would I be, well, maybe before I was working in an office job and doing, work for like another company, which is okay. That's great. A lot of people do that, but I just didn't feel like that was where I just didn't want to do that anymore. So leaving my full-time job it was kind of an easy decision. I mean, that was again, I regretted it later when things weren't working very, very well. But when I look back on it now, it's like, wow, I'm really glad I did that because I didn't want to be filling out reports for something that I didn't really care about. I just had to have that, I had to set that passion on fire and just do my own thing. So,
What's been one of your favorite fan letters you've gotten about your work?
oh, wow. So, yeah, I got a letter. I think it might have been a few years back, but it was from a woman who's living in Singapore. And she said that she had picked up, I'm just like going off my memory here, but she said that she had read one of my books. I think it was Relaunch Your Life. And the book was basically about that, how to reset your life, reset your day, and she said that it had such an impact on her that she took it to her. She was a teacher. She took it to her class and she would start reading the book like for 10 or 15 minutes a day to the class. I think she was teaching maybe sixth grade or something. And I just thought, wow, like that's one person who, found one of my books and then started to share it with people that she's in contact with every day. And maybe that's having like all it takes really sometimes is for us to just hear like one message and that could change everything, right? So that was one message. I mean, yeah, I've had like probably a lot of letters over the years that, and most of them were positive, but they were always like from people who needed the content at the time when they needed it, like it's something wasn't working in their life and they just happened to find it by coincidence. So,
So in your books, you give a lot of good advice. What's the best
mm.
advice you've ever gotten?
Well, the best advice I ever gotten is keep pushing forward. So I'm a big believer in just doing whatever it takes to get to where you want to go. And we don't always know where that is. I mean, we don't know where we're going to end up, I guess, but I um I don't like sitting still, right? So that's probably why like when I get up in the morning and my alarm goes off, unless it's a Sunday, I'm usually out of bed within 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. I'm up, I'm done. I'm on the floor doing push-ups and I'm meditating. And, so for me, like it's all about, yeah, the best advice someone gave me is like, no matter what, just keep pushing forward, like don't let perfectionism get in your way. When it does, deal with it, but you got to keep breaking those obstacles that are standing between you and whatever it is that you want. And for me, like that thing that I want, I think is just to be the greatest version of myself, not because I want to be great, but I want to be able to live that kind of lifestyle so I can teach other people how it's done. Like it's just like I just want to learn how to do it and then apply that so I can teach other people the way that, like, hey, here's what I did, and you're going to do it differently, but this worked for me, and because a lot of people get stuck, they don't know what the next step is, so they don't take the next step, and it's like sometimes we just have to take that next step. I think it's like, the the first step of every journey, like what the beginning of every journey is, like that first step. Well, you just got to take that first step sometimes. You don't have to think about the big plan 10 miles down the road. So,
So of all of the things that you've accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
hmm, there's a lot, but I'm gonna say probably having my two kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's a quick story to that too, though,
Yeah.
because um, at the time, so my daughter's 16, my boy's 14, and they were really just at the time, like my wife, she could not have kids because our tubes were all like, messed up, right? So they had to do, like an operation, and it was like a big deal. And it was like a 20% chance of having kids, they told us. And we actually did it like on the first time. And they said, like, after the first time, it doesn't work, the chances actually get less if you try it again and again and again. But we did it twice, and we got lucky both times. So I look at that as kind of like two miracles.
Oh
So.
yeah, for sure. So what do you like the best about living in Japan?
Oh man, I just a lot of things. Well, as you know, the sushi is really good. The
Yeah.
food is great. But what I love about it is like, so we went to Kyoto a few weeks ago, right? My partner and I, and yeah, what I love about it is like I can be on the bullet train, which by the way, they're just amazing. Like I can be on a bullet train. I'm like 10 minutes from the station. I get there, I go on a bullet train. I can be to Kobe in 20 minutes, which is an amazing city. And then I can be to Osaka in 30 minutes. I can be to Kyoto in 50 minutes. And Kyoto is just like another world. So like I can almost like step through it. Like if I wanted to get on the train tomorrow, I could be in a different world, like within
Yeah.
an hour. Right. And so anyway, we went to Kyoto, and we're just like walking through all these streets. And I've been there before, but every time it's a different experience. And there's like Maiko walking around, and geisha, and there's this, it's just like this. We went to this part of like old Japan, and it was just like the taxi driver's taking us down these what he called streets, I call sidewalks. And he's just speeding down these back alleys trying to take us to this little restaurant we were trying to get to, right? So I could probably spend half an hour talking about that trip, but that's just the thing. Like, there's everywhere you go, like there's something different to see. It's just so amazing. So,
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, Scott.
mm,
Family, friends, fans, but you run the show. What's your
mm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
So my perception of myself is, you know, my intention is to be good to everybody, to be kind to everybody. I don't always succeed at that, but I notice when I'm not, and then I course correct. So for me, like my perception is somebody who's always looking for a way to better oneself. But again, it's not just all about me so that I can be, but I know like if I can work on myself and to get better at, become the greatest version of myself, like I said, I can teach that to other people as well. So I think I see myself as a leader, right? As a leader in, I don't like to use the word self-help, and personal, like self-help is kind of like, but definitely like leadership for teaching people how to, uh, you know, scale up and level up not just their lives, but their, like build something like so here's what I really want, right? I want to be the advocate for somebody who is living the dream that most people only dream about, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of like how I got here. Like I made the decision to, again, and when I made that decision to go overseas and travel, I wasn't like I didn't choose Japan, it maybe chose me, but I made that decision because nobody else was doing it. When I told my friends, they were like, "No, you're not doing that. You've got your car and your stereo." And I was single at the time, so I didn't have anything really tying me down. But I was like, "Nope, I'm going to do this thing because nobody else was going to do it." And I just wanted to do something that was just new and different. And I think it's worked out so far. So.
Absolutely, I'm sure. So let me ask you this. Where's the best place for people to get your books? Reach out to you, anything about your world, where can they go?
For sure, yeah. So they can go to scottallenpublishing.com. That's where we have the site for it's the publishing site where they can just go there and check out the books, and they can all links go back to Amazon. But we also have a Shopify store at scottallenbooks.com. That's about it's almost finished, but you can still buy stuff on there. Eventually, there will be courses soon. So this year we're building out courses, and there's a lot of I've got a kind of a small team I put together, so we're building out a lot of exciting stuff this year.
Excellent. Scott, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Send my love to Japan and good luck with everything.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.